presentation discusses Functional Communication Training, or FCT. Our presenters will be Mallory Guest, Carmelina Napolitano, Virginia Payne, David Sober, Ashley Stryker, and Caroline Sweeney. The name of the individual speaking during each slide will appear on the lower right corner of the screen. The format of the presentation will closely mirror the format of the implementation plan in discussing the various components of the exploration and installation phases of the intervention.
Functional Communication Training, or FCT, is a differential reinforcement procedure in which one socially appropriate behavior is taught to replace an inappropriate behavior. FCT is effective with a variety of behaviors, including aggression, self-injurious behavior, stereotypy, and inappropriate communicative behaviors maintained by all four functions, which are attention, access to tangibles, escape, or self-stimulatory. One major advantage of FCT is that it can be implemented in any setting a problem behavior occurs. Although a board-certified behavior analyst is recommended to complete the functional analysis or functional behavior assessment, studies have shown that indirect assessments, like interviews and surveys, and direct observations of a client may be used to hypothesize the function of a behavior and be sufficient enough for teachers to develop a plan as long as data are collected on the intervention. Once a function has been identified, FCT can be implemented by anyone. And not surprisingly, there are many times that FCT is implemented naturally without the person even realizing they're using principles of behavior. Functional communication training is needed so that students can acquire more appropriate behaviors that match a specific communicative function. As opposed to other function-based differential reinforcement procedures, FCT provides a recognizable form of communication. For example, differential reinforcement of incompatible behaviors does not involve the client learning to engage in a new behavior, but rather substitutes one for another. And lastly, while FCT can encompass the use of sign language, each client's unique communicative replacement makes it a great intervention choice.
Many different kinds of materials can be used when teaching functional communication training. For individuals who have very low verbal skills, pictures may be used to teach them how to communicate in more effective ways. These could include the word break, help, or could be a picture of a toilet or another item of preference. The materials used are very client-specific and depends on which behavior is being replaced and what needs to be taught. Sign language is another form of functional communication training which can be used with or without cue cards. Once again, though, this depends on the client's skill level. It is also very important to have highly preferred items or reinforcers available to the individual who is learning functional communication. These are provided once the individual engages in the appropriate behavior. Reinforcers can be edibles like M&Ms or Doritos. They can also be preferred toys like an iPad or a toy truck, or they can be activities that the individual likes to engage in, like swinging or playing outside. Lastly, data collection sheets should always be included in the materials for any functional communication training. In some cases, this may be the only material you are required to have along with the reinforcers. These situations may be if the child is simply learning an appropriate replacement phrase or raising their hand in class. The child may only need to be prompted to engage in the appropriate behavior and then receive his or her reinforcer. Overall, the client's needs and skill levels should always be what determine the appropriate materials for any intervention.
The innovation for functional communication training is to change the way a child is communicating his wants and needs. It addresses the problem by teaching the child to engage in appropriate replacement behaviors, such as pointing to a picture card of the item he or she wants, as opposed to engaging in problem behaviors such as screaming for that item. In order to plan for implementation, the child study team will use conjoint behavioral consultation to discuss the concerns with the parents in a team-oriented manner. Mansell and Bowen provide a great framework for planning to implement an FCT program. Once consent is given, first the BCBA will conduct a functional behavioral assessment to determine why the child is engaging in the problem behaviors. Then she will identify a communicating response and then develop a treatment plan. Trainings will be provided to all staff members that are going to be engaging with this child prior to beginning the implementation to ensure treatment fidelity, which just means that we want to make sure that everyone is implementing the intervention the way the BCBA intended it to be implemented. The team will create the materials for the program, and the BCBA will provide ongoing supervision for all members involved. Currently, the school can deliver the intervention once the staff have been trained by the BCBA. Once target behavior is identified and all staff understand how the FCT program will be used, the team can begin to take action. Studies have found that teachers, paraprofessionals, and other support personnel can implement FCT programs effectively and efficiently. For classification of school-wide positive behavior support interventions, please review Simonson, Sugai, and Negron 2008 for additional information of the three-tier system. FCT is a Tier 3 system because it is used for those children who exhibit problem behaviors and need extra support to communicate appropriately. FCT is highly individualized to target each child's particular problem behavior.
The first potential barrier to implementation is that the change agents, or those who are implementing the intervention, such as school staff or parents, should be well versed on reinforcement and extinction so that the inappropriate behavior targeted for decrease is not inadvertently reinforced and maintained. Second, prior misconceptions about behavior therapy may result in some hesitation. Contrary to past beliefs, ABA is not experimental, it does not use aversive punishment, and it does not just bribe into doing things. Treatment integrity is important so the intervention is implemented as it was intended and so that socially significant change can be made reliably. Contact with reinforcement goes for both the client and the change agent. If the client isn't receiving immediate reinforcement after appropriate behavior is exhibited, or if the change agent isn't being negatively reinforced with a decrease in the client's behavior, the process of meaningful behavior change may be more gradual. Finally, functional communication training is still considered an emerging intervention by the National Standards Project, but this is mainly due to the scarcity of large group research designs on the intervention.
As a part of the installation phase, the funding streams for this implementation will require a low cost for the materials needed, such as the paper, lamination, and reinforcement for the child, will be available to the general fund of the Special Education Department. The additional expense that needs to be considered is for the payroll of the contract for the BCBA. What will be involved with the reorganization of materials is that the pictures will need to be created depending on the developmental level of the child, or for example, whether they do better with words or pictures on the card that they will give. The personnel utilization, as mentioned previously, the individuals, teachers, their aides, paraprofessionals, therapists, and other staff that they might come in contact with will be utilized for the training purposes because we want to emphasize the generalization and being easily understood by anyone they may be coming in contact with. In order to ensure a high level of treatment integrity, the BCBA will be in charge of conducting audits among the staff following their training in this implementation. It will involve treatment fidelity checklists such as the example below, which will have the name of the staff being observed, the client they are with, and the date and time of the observation. And below that are steps that are found to be very important to the success of this treatment. And then they can record any comments they may have to the staff or any future training that they may need.
Before the intervention can be implemented, the school must first identify a positive behavior intervention support team. This team will consist of staff that works directly with the student, including the student's BCBA, general and special education teachers, and other paraprofessionals. Having a designated team will increase communication and ensure the implementation of the intervention is consistent. The team will make sure to provide positive relationships between the staff and the student and create an environment that promotes the student's success. The student's BCBA will lead the implementation of the intervention and train the student's general and special education teachers and any paraprofessionals who work directly with the student how to implement the intervention. The team will meet to discuss the student's behavior, the function of the behavior, and antecedent strategies. The BCBA will conduct an FBA to determine the exact function of the behavior and how to address the behavior. The BCBA will hold a meeting with the team to discuss the FBA and the data collected, the intervention plan, and how to implement the intervention. The BCBA will first need to train the student's general and special education teachers along with paraprofessionals on the targeted behavior and how to collect behavior data for the FBA to aid in hypothesizing the function of the behavior. The BCBA will also discuss with the team what will need to be recorded and included in the data collection and how the data will be analyzed.
The BCBA will also train the staff on FCT and how to implement the student's individual FCT. In the FCT training, the staff will learn the environments where the FCT will be implemented, specific stimuli to be used, and how to use the stimuli, prompts that should be used, how to fade prompts to promote independence, consequences for inappropriate behavior, types of reinforcement that should be used, and the schedule of reinforcement.
The last part of the installation phase includes startup costs, necessary training, and parent and community involvement. The major costs associated with implementing FCT are of the previously mentioned materials for implementation and of contracting the BCBA, which is around $50 to $125 an hour. If using an iPad or tablet as a reinforcer, this will likely incur the largest material cost, ranging anywhere from $200 to $850. In the event that a client doesn't already own one or can't afford one, organizations such as Autism Speaks provide grants to help families purchase an iPad. In regards to training costs, the BCBA will provide training to the school staff involved with the intervention, as previously discussed. Ideally, these trainings would take place during school hours in order to minimize the need for staff to attend outside trainings. In this case, no additional cost for training should be incurred. The final component of the plan is parent and community involvement. As with any intervention that is intended to change a child's behavior, a critical component of FCT is generalization across settings and persons. If the behaviors don't appear in settings and with persons other than where the initial intervention takes place, the staff's hard work is for naught. Therefore, it's critical that the parents are involved with FCT. Parents should be encouraged to implement FCT with their children, and a study by Tate and colleagues showed that with adequate training, parents can do this effectively and accurately. To achieve this, the BCBA would provide training to the parents that is similar to training provided to school staff. This training would cover not only how to implement FCT, but also where to implement it, and would encourage its use in community settings such as while eating at a restaurant, grocery shopping, or at the movie theater. This way, the child has opportunities to demonstrate FCT skills in various environments. In conclusion, FCT can be extremely effective in reducing problematic behaviors and increasing behaviors that work to communicate a child's wants and needs more efficiently and appropriately. In this way, the child receives great benefits in learning a better means of communication. This, in turn, works to improve not only the child's quality of life, but also the quality of life of the child's teachers, parents, and others involved in the child's life. Thank you so much for watching our presentation.